Iconic American brand Harley-Davidson. We reported last night here President Trump lashing out after Harley-Davidson said it was moving some production overseas.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
So let's talk a little bit about the deal itself. You raised $334 million in gross proceeds, which...
Harley-Davidson has long been an emblem of American craftsmanship, freedom, and rebellion, a brand deeply rooted in the country's cultural and industrial history. The company's iconic motorcycles have roared through American highways for over a century, becoming a symbol not only of individual liberty, but also of the enduring strength of American manufacturing. Yet, in a stunning turn of events, Harley-Davidson CEO Jochen Zeitz has announced that the company is facing massive financial challenges, forcing the difficult decision to shut down its U.S. manufacturing plants and shift operations overseas. This drastic measure follows the recent announcement by newly elected U.S. President Donald Trump, who has imposed sweeping tariffs on key trade partners. In retaliation, those countries have introduced tariffs of their own, creating a web of economic conflict that has left companies like Harley-Davidson in an impossible position. Before we start, hit the like and subscribe buttons for more exclusive news. The announcement shook the foundation of American industry. Harley-Davidson, one of the last bastions of large-scale domestic motorcycle production, now finds itself caught in the geopolitical crossfire of protectionist economic policy. The tariffs, originally introduced as a means to bolster domestic production and protect American jobs, have had the opposite effect for businesses heavily reliant on international supply chains and global markets. For Harley-Davidson, a company that exports a significant portion of its motorcycles abroad and relies on components from various countries, the cost implications of the tariffs have proven devastating. The financial strain began to surface immediately following the tariff implementations. Costs for essential components such as steel and aluminum, materials integral to motorcycle manufacturing, skyrocketed due to the new import duties. Suppliers, both domestic and foreign, were unable to absorb the price increases, passing them directly onto manufacturers. Simultaneously, the retaliatory tariffs from countries like the European Union, Canada, and China made Harley-Davidson's exported motorcycles significantly more expensive abroad, leading to a dramatic slump in international sales. This dual pressure created a crushing scenario: rising costs to build and shrinking markets to sell. As the company tried to navigate these treacherous waters, internal discussions turned from resilient strategies to survival tactics. Initially, there were attempts to reduce operational costs, consolidate product lines, and renegotiate supplier contracts. However, the fundamental economic reality could not be avoided. Manufacturing in the United States under these conditions was no longer viable. Zeitz, faced with mounting losses and declining shareholder confidence, was forced to announce the closure of domestic factories and the relocation of production facilities to more economically stable regions abroad. This decision marks a painful chapter in the history of American manufacturing. The closure of U.S. factories not only affects thousands of Harley-Davidson employees, many of whom have dedicated decades to the company, but also sends a ripple through the broader community. Towns and cities that grew alongside Harley-Davidson's plants, whose economies were deeply entwined with the company's operations, now face economic uncertainty. The loss of these jobs is not just a statistic on a balance sheet, it's a deeply personal blow to families and communities who have long taken pride in being part of the Harley-Davidson legacy. Moreover, the move abroad strikes at the heart of Harley-Davidson's brand identity. For a company that built its reputation on being American-made, shifting production to foreign soil presents a complex branding dilemma. Loyal customers, particularly those who champion the Made in America ethos, may find it difficult to reconcile their allegiance with the new manufacturing reality. The brand now walks a tightrope, trying to maintain its heritage while adapting to the economic demands of a new global landscape. The political dimensions of this development cannot be ignored. President Trump's tariff strategy was intended to reinvigorate American industry by penalizing foreign competition and encouraging domestic consumption. However, for globally integrated companies like Harley-Davidson, which depend on international suppliers and markets, the policy has led to unintended and deeply damaging consequences. What was framed as an America First approach has paradoxically pushed an iconic American manufacturer to abandon domestic production. The broader economic implications of this shift are substantial. Harley-Davidson's move sets a precedent that other manufacturers may follow. In industries where profit margins are razor thin and competition is fierce, the added burden of tariffs can make domestic production unfeasible. Other companies observing Harley-Davidson's struggle may begin to reevaluate their own manufacturing strategies, potentially triggering a cascade of factory closures and offshoring decisions. This would erode the very industrial base the tariffs were intended to protect. Investor confidence in Harley-Davidson has also taken a hit. Financial markets responded swiftly to the announcement, with the company's stock price dipping amid fears of long-term viability and brand erosion. Analysts have expressed concern about the sustainability of Harley-Davidson's business model in a post-tariff landscape. The increased operational complexity of managing overseas production, coupled with ongoing trade uncertainty, adds layers of risk that investors must now factor into their calculations. From a consumer perspective, the changes will also be felt. While Harley-Davidson aims to maintain product quality and design consistency, the shift in manufacturing could alter customer perceptions. Some may question whether a Harley built in Thailand or India can truly offer the same experience as one assembled in Milwaukee or York. The intangible value of authenticity, so central to the Harley brand, may be diminished in the eyes of die-hard enthusiasts. The supply chain challenges further complicate the picture. Transitioning production overseas involves more than relocating machinery. It requires rebuilding supplier relationships, ensuring quality control, retraining staff, and navigating new regulatory environments. These logistical hurdles will likely lead to production delays and initial inefficiencies, impacting the availability of motorcycles in both domestic and international markets. Harley-Davidson will need to invest heavily in building and optimizing these new manufacturing bases, diverting resources from research, development, and marketing. The social impact of the closures is perhaps the most poignant. Factory workers, many of whom have generational ties to Harley-Davidson, now face uncertain futures. The loss of well-paying manufacturing jobs, positions that often served as the economic backbone of local communities, contributes to a broader narrative of industrial decline. As workers are forced to seek employment in different industries or relocate to find similar roles, the psychological toll of dislocation and displacement adds another layer of hardship. Harley-Davidson's predicament is also a cautionary tale about the complexity of modern trade dynamics. In an interconnected global economy, unilateral actions such as tariffs can have far-reaching and often unpredictable consequences. While the intent may be to protect national interests, the reality is that industries like motorcycle manufacturing are deeply woven into international networks. Components come from one country, assembly happens in another, and the final product is sold across continents. Disrupting one link in this chain has cascading effects throughout the system. In the political realm, the Harley-Davidson closure provides fodder for debate on trade policy and economic nationalism. Critics of the Trump administration's tariffs point to this development as evidence that protectionism can backfire, particularly when applied to complex, globalized industries. They argue that strategic engagement with trade partners, rather than confrontation, is a more sustainable path to economic growth. On the other side, proponents of the tariffs may view Harley-Davidson's decision as a failure of corporate patriotism, accusing the company of prioritizing profits over national loyalty. Caught between these opposing viewpoints is the reality of a rapidly shifting economic landscape. Businesses must make decisions based on financial viability, not ideology. For Harley-Davidson, continuing to manufacture in the United States under the current tariff structure would have meant operating at a loss, an unsustainable proposition. Moving production abroad was not a choice made lightly, but rather a necessity for survival in a hostile economic environment. This event also has implications for American consumers. Prices of Harley-Davidson motorcycles could fluctuate as a result of the new manufacturing model. Shipping costs, import duties from re-entering the U.S. market, and currency exchange rates all factor into the final retail price. Consumers may find themselves paying more for a product that no longer carries the full weight of American origin. a change that could affect purchasing decisions and brand loyalty. Beyond Harley-Davidson, the ripple effects of this announcement are likely to be felt throughout the motorcycle industry and broader manufacturing sector. Competitors may see an opportunity to capture market share domestically, but they too face the same macroeconomic pressures. Smaller manufacturers in particular may lack the resources to pivot their operations as Harley-Davidson has. This raises concerns about consolidation in the industry, reduced competition, and a narrowing of consumer choice. The educational sector may also be affected. Trade schools and technical colleges that offered programs in motorcycle repair and manufacturing, often in partnership with companies like Harley-Davidson, could see declining enrollment or diminished job placement rates. This creates a feedback loop where fewer trained workers are available, further weakening the domestic industrial ecosystem. Environmental considerations may also enter the conversation. Moving production overseas could affect Harley-Davidson's carbon footprint, depending on the energy sources and regulatory standards in the host countries. Additionally, increased shipping distances for materials and finished goods could result in higher emissions. These environmental costs, though often overlooked in the initial economic calculations, are part of the broader impact of globalization and trade policy decisions. At a cultural level, the departure of Harley-Davidson from American soil strikes a nerve. The motorcycle is more than a machine, it's a symbol. Harley has been part of countless American stories, from soldiers returning from war and riding for solace, to rebels thundering down desert highways, to weekend riders chasing freedom on open roads. To see such a storied brand pack up and leave its birthplace evokes a sense of loss that goes beyond economics. What remains to be seen is how this transformation will shape Harley-Davidson's future identity. Will it manage to retain its core ethos in a new geographic context? Can a motorcycle built in another country still embody the spirit of American freedom and rebellion? The answers to these questions will unfold in the years to come. But for now, the company and its fans are left grappling with the shock of a profound shift. The implications of Harley-Davidson's decision to move production abroad echo far beyond the confines of the company itself. It reflects the tensions of a world where economic nationalism collides with globalization, where political decisions reverberate through industries and communities, and where legacy brands must evolve or perish. For Harley-Davidson, this moment marks not just a strategic pivot, but a turning point in its long and storied journey. While the initial shock of Harley-Davidson's decision to relocate manufacturing abroad reverberated across the industry and the nation, the full scope of what this means for American manufacturing and global trade began to unravel in more nuanced ways. The shuttering of U.S. facilities and the announcement that production would be moved overseas represent more than a change in geography. They reveal the layered complexity of running a modern industrial operation in a politically volatile, economically unpredictable world. Harley-Davidson's transition away from domestic manufacturing isn't simply a cost-cutting maneuver. It's a reflection of how global commerce has evolved into a delicate, often fragile ecosystem. The company operates in an industry where innovation cycles are shorter than ever. Consumer preferences shift rapidly, and market agility is essential. Remaining competitive means being able to adapt not only to technological advancements, but also to fluctuating trade conditions, labor markets, and regional demand trends. The sudden shift in U.S. trade policy forced Harley-Davidson to reassess all these moving parts under a new and more restrictive economic regime. Relocating production overseas grants Harley-Davidson access to more predictable cost structures and greater supply chain flexibility. Many countries in Southeast Asia, for instance, not only offer lower labor costs, but also provide tax incentives, reduced regulatory burdens, and access to burgeoning middle-class markets. The decision to move manufacturing could allow Harley-Davidson to better serve growing markets where motorcycles are both status symbols and practical transportation. In places like India, Indonesia, and parts of South America, demand for two-wheelers is robust and expanding. Establishing a local presence there may allow the company to customize offerings, adjust to regional preferences, and streamline logistics, all of which are increasingly vital in a competitive global landscape. Yet this shift also means Harley-Davidson must completely overhaul its operational strategy. The logistical challenges involved in setting up new production lines overseas are monumental. Factories need to be built or acquired, skilled labor recruited and trained, and quality assurance systems established from the ground up. A brand like Harley-Davidson cannot afford subpar output, even temporarily. It must replicate its meticulous craftsmanship and engineering precision in entirely new environments. No small feat when brand equity is so tightly bound to perceived quality and legacy. There are also strategic considerations regarding local sourcing. To insulate itself from future tariff shocks, Harley-Davidson will likely deepen its relationships with suppliers located near its new production bases. This will gradually decouple the company from its long-standing US-based supplier network, affecting smaller American companies that have depended on Harley's business for decades. Such severance may not make headlines, but for many regional suppliers, losing Harley-Davidson as a client could result in layoffs, revenue loss, or even closure. These quieter consequences underscore the cascading nature of such a decision. Additionally, there are regulatory and compliance considerations. Each new country of operation brings with it a unique regulatory framework, covering environmental standards, labor laws, taxation, and more. Harley-Davidson's legal and compliance teams will now face the enormous task of navigating multiple jurisdictions. Any misstep in this arena could result in penalties or reputational damage, particularly in regions where corporate conduct is under increasing scrutiny by both governments and consumers. The communication strategy surrounding this decision is also pivotal. Harley-Davidson cannot afford to alienate its core American customer base, many of whom see the brand not just as a product, but as a lifestyle. Marketing and brand management will be tasked with a delicate balancing act, preserving the company's American image while embracing its new global operational footprint. This will require innovative storytelling and a renewed focus on values that transcend geography: freedom, individuality, resilience, if the company hopes to retain loyalty. Meanwhile, competitors are closely observing Harley-Davidson's playbook. Other American manufacturers who rely heavily on global sales and imported parts are analyzing the risks and benefits of following suit. Harley-Davidson's actions may signal a broader trend that iconic brands can no longer afford to operate on patriotic sentiment alone. Shareholders and executives alike are compelled by hard numbers, and if overseas operations offer better margins and fewer barriers, the decision becomes less ideological and more survivalist. On the global stage, trade partners now view the American tariff stance with heightened skepticism. The retaliatory measures enacted in response to the U.S. tariffs may have been economically defensive, but they also reveal just how interdependent global markets truly are. Harley-Davidson, caught in the crosshairs, became a case study in how international policy disputes translate into tangible industrial consequences. The company's departure may serve as a warning to policymakers. Short-term nationalistic strategies can lead to long-term economic dislocation, especially when multinational corporations are forced to seek stability beyond U.S. borders. Domestically, this situation also prompts deeper questions about the resilience and adaptability of American industrial policy. The assumption that tariffs would restore domestic manufacturing strength has been sharply challenged. Instead of revitalizing factories, the measures have increased production costs, narrowed export markets, and triggered a strategic exodus. This outcome may fuel a broader discussion among economists, legislators, and industry leaders about how to realistically support manufacturing in an era of global interdependence. In labor circles, Harley-Davidson's decision has reignited long-standing tensions about offshoring and the erosion of middle-class manufacturing jobs. Labor unions, already grappling with diminished influence over the last several decades, now face the challenge of advocating for workers in an environment where multinational firms can more easily circumvent domestic labor pressures. The closure of Harley factories represents not just a loss of jobs, but also a shrinking of organized labor's footprint in the industrial sector, a trend with wide-reaching implications for wage negotiations, working conditions, and collective bargaining power. From a cultural standpoint, Harley-Davidson's departure marks a turning point in the mythology of American industry. Once regarded as proof that American manufacturing excellence could withstand globalization, the company now joins a growing list of firms that have found domestic operations incompatible with modern economic realities. For many, This evokes a profound sense of disillusionment. It raises existential questions about what remains uniquely American in the products we consume and whether such uniqueness can survive in a global marketplace driven by efficiency and scale. The educational sector may eventually feel a ripple effect as well. High school programs and technical colleges that once directed students toward careers in vehicle manufacturing now face increasing difficulty justifying those paths. Without strong domestic players like Harley-Davidson, vocational training in this space risks becoming less relevant or appealing, which in turn affects enrollment, funding, and long-term viability. This decline in industrial education erodes the talent pipeline and further entrenches the notion that America's manufacturing golden age is a thing of the past. Paradoxically, this could accelerate innovation in foreign facilities while leaving American plants technologically stagnant or obsolete. Over time, the gap between what is made in the U.S. versus abroad may widen not just in cost, but in quality and innovation as well. There's also a branding paradox at play. While moving overseas helps Harley-Davidson cut costs and potentially grow in new markets, it risks diluting its core identity. The motorcycle market is emotional. Customers aren't just buying machines, they're buying what those machines represent. The authenticity, grit, and history embedded in an American-made Harley cannot be replicated merely through marketing slogans. No matter how meticulously the foreign facilities are modeled on U.S. production lines, a Harley manufactured in another country could struggle to evoke the same visceral loyalty from longtime customers. On a strategic level, Harley-Davidson's leadership must now orchestrate a brand repositioning that doesn't compromise its legacy while embracing its new operational identity. This is a formidable challenge in the best of times, let alone during a politically charged period when offshoring is a loaded term. The company must navigate this transformation without alienating domestic customers or appearing to betray its heritage. The tightrope walk between tradition and evolution has never been more treacherous. Meanwhile, local economies that once benefited from Harley-Davidson's presence must now confront a period of upheaval. Entire ecosystems, from machine shops and parts suppliers to diners and retail outlets near the plants, are now at risk. These secondary losses are often underrepresented in economic statistics, but deeply felt on the ground. Communities must grapple with how to fill the void left behind. Some may attempt to attract new industries or pivot toward different sectors, but transitions like these are rarely seamless and often take years to yield meaningful results. As policymakers analyze the fallout, one thing becomes clear. Industrial policy in the United States can no longer rely on old paradigms. Global competition, technological advancement, and political volatility require a more sophisticated, agile, and collaborative approach to economic strategy. The fate of Harley-Davidson reveals the shortcomings of reactive measures like tariffs in dealing with systemic challenges. A more comprehensive approach, one that includes targeted support for innovation, workforce retraining, infrastructure investment, and international cooperation, may be necessary to prevent further erosion of the industrial base. Additionally, this development may serve as a wake-up call to American consumers. There is often a disconnect between the demand for low-cost products and the desire for domestic manufacturing. Harley-Davidson's exit forces a confrontation with the uncomfortable truth that maintaining high-wage, high-quality manufacturing jobs at home often results in higher prices for consumers. If the market isn't willing to bear that cost, even the most iconic brands must adapt or vanish. Internationally, the shift in Harley-Davidson's manufacturing footprint may enhance its competitiveness in emerging markets. By building closer to its fastest-growing customer bases, the company gains logistical advantages and avoids further geopolitical tensions. However, success abroad may also depend on how well Harley-Davidson can localize its product design and marketing without straying too far from the core characteristics that define its brand. Striking this balance will be essential if the company hopes to thrive in regions with very different consumer expectations. Furthermore, the shift may influence Harley-Davidson's internal culture. The company's identity has been deeply tied to its American workforce, many of whom brought not only technical expertise, but a deep sense of pride and purpose. Transitioning to new teams abroad means rebuilding that culture from scratch, instilling a sense of mission, commitment to quality, and brand pride among workers who may not have the same historical or emotional connection to the Harley name. The success of this cultural transplant will be a key determinant in how well the company preserves its values across borders. The financial world will continue to monitor Harley-Davidson's performance closely. Investors will be watching key metrics: profit margins, international sales growth, supply chain resilience, and customer retention rates. Any slip in product quality or delivery timelines could erode confidence. Conversely, if the company demonstrates improved profitability and operational efficiency, it may validate the controversial decision to leave U.S. manufacturing behind. But such validation will come with costs that are already being borne by American workers, suppliers, and communities. As Harley-Davidson prepares to enter this new phase of global restructuring, it must also recalibrate its internal organizational architecture to align with the shift in operations. Managing an international manufacturing model demands a different set of leadership competencies than a domestically concentrated business. Company executives must now operate across time zones, languages, and legal systems, requiring expanded regional management, cross-cultural leadership training, and enhanced communication infrastructures to ensure cohesion across global teams. This transformation requires not just logistical redirection, but a wholesale cultural and managerial shift, an evolution in how Harley-Davidson functions at every level. The finance department will face increased complexity due to the need to manage multiple currencies, comply with foreign tax codes, and hedge against international financial risks such as inflation volatility or sudden policy shifts in host countries. Financial forecasting becomes more uncertain when operating in less stable markets, and the risk profile of the company as a whole changes. This forces more conservative financial planning, increased insurance coverage, and potential reallocation of investment portfolios toward emerging market resilience. Strategic financial agility becomes critical in maintaining equilibrium during this high-stakes transition. One overlooked aspect of moving production abroad is the intellectual property (IP) challenge. With the relocation of advanced manufacturing processes and proprietary technologies, Harley-Davidson must now protect its trade secrets and engineering blueprints in jurisdictions with varying levels of IP enforcement. The company faces heightened risk of imitation or reverse engineering, particularly in countries where counterfeit markets flourish. Strengthening legal protections and tightening security around product designs and digital systems is essential to preventing dilution of the brand through unauthorized replication. At the same time, the company must contend with the environmental, social, and governance (ESG) expectations of a new era. Investors and consumers increasingly demand transparency and ethical standards from corporations operating across borders. Moving manufacturing to countries with different environmental regulations could draw scrutiny from activist groups and watchdog organizations. Harley-Davidson must demonstrate that its overseas facilities meet rigorous environmental and labor standards to avoid reputational damage. Sustainability reports, third-party audits, and certifications may become a regular part of its corporate governance strategy going forward. On the operational side, supply chain management will become an even more intricate dance of coordination and contingency planning. Logistics managers must factor in port congestions, international customs procedures, border inspections, and the potential for geopolitical disruptions such as sanctions or blockades. The vulnerability of just-in-time production models is laid bare when components must now travel farther and through more uncertain routes. Harley-Davidson may need to adopt a more hybrid inventory model, combining lean efficiency with buffer stockpiling to guard against disruptions. There's also a marked shift in the product development cycle under this new global model. While Harley-Davidson was once able to iterate quickly between design, testing, and production due to geographic proximity within the U.S., extended distances between design headquarters and production facilities may slow innovation. To maintain development speed, the company will need to enhance digital collaboration tools, invest in virtual prototyping, and decentralize elements of its R&D processes to bring development closer to manufacturing sites. Legal compliance takes on a broader and more challenging scope as well. Each country's rules regarding product safety, emissions, labor rights, and consumer protections differ. Harley-Davidson will need robust compliance departments in every major jurisdiction it operates in. This increases operational overhead and requires legal teams with specialized local knowledge. Non-compliance, even if unintentional, could lead to fines, sales bans, or criminal liability. Navigating these legal labyrinths without slowing down business processes is one of the most demanding aspects of multinational operation. The human capital strategy must also be redefined. Workforce dynamics in overseas markets differ sharply from those in the United States. Education levels, technical skill availability, cultural attitudes toward employment, and labor expectations vary widely. Recruiting, training, and retaining skilled workers becomes an ongoing challenge, especially when trying to instill the same dedication and brand loyalty found in legacy U.S. facilities. Harley-Davidson must invest heavily in onboarding, brand culture training, and incentives tailored to new cultural contexts to build a reliable, motivated workforce abroad. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, could you leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Harley-Davidson moving abroad? Will tariffs hurt U.S. businesses more? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.